In this video, we're going to show you how to replace your front caliper on your Nissan Altima. It's located behind your front wheel. It's time to remove our wheel. We're going to use a 21mm socket. Make sure you hold on to the wheel so it doesn't fall off. Put your lug nuts where you can find them. And then we're going to go for our bolts here, which are 12mm. Okay. And crack open these. We're going to loosen up these slides for the caliper. Take out the bolts. I typically leave the top one in for a second. Now you can take a pry bar and just pry up the caliper. And then you can take this bolt out. Remove it. I'm going to lean it right here. Do not kink this hose. If you have a caliper hanger, or you could just use a bungee cord, you can anchor it to the spring. Okay, at this point, I'm going to take off my pads. I'm going to notice where my sensors are. They make you squeak when you need brakes. Those are on the top. I'm going to say that out loud so that I myself remember. We're going to take the caliper bracket bolts out now. These are 22mm socket. They are pretty snug. If you don't have air tools at your house or battery operated tools, you may need a breaker bar to break them loose. I usually loosen it until I can do finger loosening, because you don't want the bracket to fall off. So I like to hold my rotor on with a lug nut. Keeps it more stable when you're putting your bracket and caliper back on. We're going to take out these caliper slides, make sure there's enough grease inside. I'm using a 14mm socket. These little rubber things slide back off of it. You might need a little screwdriver. A little persuasion Just don't want to rip the boot. And pull it out. And as you can see, there's plenty of grease in there. Push it back down. Make sure you get all the air out. You can pull that back a little bit, let the air out. And it slides freely. Do the same thing with the other side. Pinch it. Pull it down. Maybe use your screwdriver if needed. Slide it out. That looks pretty good to me. Slide it back in. Get the air out. All right, so that's in good working order. Now I'm going to take this out because I don't need the vise anymore. Prepare the caliper bracket for pads. Adding a little grease here. Place the shims in. Remembering that the wings, is what I call these, are up. And now we're ready to put this on the car. I'm now going to put the caliper bracket on. I would hand tighten them first. Make sure you're not cross-threading. Sometimes it's easier to do it with a socket, especially when you're putting an old bolt in a new part. That feels pretty good. We're going to snug these up a little bit before we torque them to 98 foot-pounds. I'm now going to torque them 98 foot-pounds. Just wait for that click or a beep if you have a digital torque wrench. And now we can put the brake pads back in. You're going to slide the spring tensioner through the sensor. Push it in, make sure it's locked in there. And do the same on the other side, feed it through. Now we're going to place our caliper on. Make sure the slides are out of the way. I wouldn't let go of those pads until you got it on there. Make sure you're lined up with the slides. And you're going to put your bolt through. Sometimes you got to do a little wiggle to get it in there. And we're going to tighten these down. Just snug, and then we're going to torque those to 20 foot-pounds. .20 foot-pounds with a 14 millimeter. All right, so now we're going to take off this brake hose off the caliper with a 12 millimeter socket. You're going to loosen this up. Make sure that you have a drain pan underneath to catch all the brake fluid. Okay. I usually point it up so it doesn't leak everywhere. Okay. We're going to remove this old caliper. So now we're going to take this hose and put it on the new caliper. The new caliper has a bolt and 2 copper washers. And take those out. And you're going to sandwich this hose between the 2 copper washers. So take one off, put the bolt through, put the other washer, and then there is a notch here on the line, and that tells you it goes between this on the caliper. So you're going to make sure you're facing it the right way. And you're going to screw it in. And you're going to tighten it till you squash those washers. You're going to tighten it down with an 11 millimeter socket. It feels good. Check for leaks. You can brake clean off. Make sure it's nice and clean. So now I'm going to take my 10 millimeter wrench and I'm going to open up the bleeder screw. Until I see some fluid come out. And this is called a gravity bleed. Okay, now that it's dripping, I'm going to wait for the air bubbles to be gone. That looks pretty good, and I'm going to tighten it back up. And now just make sure you clean the area. Make sure there's no brake fluid or grease on the rotor. Just let that air dry. Put your boot on. You're going to take your cap off your master cylinder. Use a rag to wipe it off so you don't put any debris inside. Fill the master cylinder up to max. Once you get there, you're going to put your cap back on. I'm going to take the slug nut off. So we can put the wheel back on. Now it's time to put our wheel back on. Keep a hand on it so it doesn't fall off. till you get a lug nut started. Make sure you finger tight them. You don't want to cross thread the lug nuts on the studs. We're going to tighten up the lug nuts with a 21mm socket and a star-like pattern. You're going to be torquing these, so don't over-tighten. All right, so now we're going to torque our wheel. This vehicle takes 83 foot-pounds, so you set your torque wrench to 83 foot-pounds, and then you're going to go in a crisscross or star pattern as you torque. You're going to wait for the click. There's one. There's two. 3, 4, and 5. I like to double check that I got them all. All right, now you can take a deep breath because you have finished the job. It's time to take your car for a road test.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.